This is Rocco. He is nearly 11 weeks old. Everyone's been waiting for this video for so long. Obviously, you guys know me, like I always want to try and have like a good balance between sort of being in the moment, being present for the boys, and then obviously like creating content for you guys as well. So I didn't want to leave it too late that I would start to forget things sort of from the birth, but I also didn't want to rush into it either, where we were adjusting with a new baby, and obviously like Max was adjusting, and just trying to figure out our new normal really. So but yeah, this video is going to be my birth story. I still can't believe he's here. He still feels so tiny, but yeah, nearly 11 weeks now, so I finally found some time to do it. Harry's in the garden, Max is sleeping, and Harry said when Max wakes he'll go and get him so I can finish filming it, because I've been trying to do this for literally weeks. I literally have no time when Harry's at work, so yeah, you'll have to excuse all the mess. These are all like clothes that both the boys have grown out of that I need to sort out. And I don't know if you can see, but there's loads of washing on Max's bed as well. So Max is asleep in my bed. So my birth story, I actually wrote it all down, to be honest. Over the last maybe week I started writing everything down so that I could actually film it. And I wrote it down as well, like I went through it and wrote it down because I didn't want to forget certain things, and I wanted it to make sense to you guys, and yeah. So the week before I actually gave birth to Rocco, I had really strong Braxton Hicks, like really strong. I actually said to Harry, I don't really remember that with Max, but he was like, yeah, you definitely did. So we had Christmas, that was all fine. Still having like the odd sort of strong Braxton Hicks, and then they kind of like died down. But literally the whole week I kept getting like really strong for like an hour, 2 hours, and then they would just completely disappear. So I knew that my body was kind of, well, I felt like my body was getting ready to sort of go into labour and give birth and everything. But I actually had my midwife appointment booked in on the 27th of December. So literally the day after Boxing Day, went to my appointment, everything was fine, but my blood pressure. My blood pressure was too high. She did it like 3 or 4 times because she thought maybe like when you're talking and you're talking about things, like sometimes your blood pressure raises. She thought maybe I had been walking like too fast, like to the actual appointment. She did it like 3 or 4 times, I'm sure, and it was still too high. I don't remember the numbers, but it was too high. So she said everything else is absolutely fine, but because of the blood pressure and because of how far along you are, you need to go to triage at the hospital. So I was like, oh gosh, okay, fine. So I called my mum, and my sister Becca actually came and got me. Didn't really know what was going to happen at this point. Obviously, as you guys know, I mean, some of you might know if you've watched like my third trimester video or my second trimester videos, sort of we had like a few sort of complications sort of up and down with Rocco anyway. Kind of like they had worries about his weight and the blood flow like from the placenta and stuff like that. So although all of those things have been ruled out, I think I was a little bit more on edge anyway, because I was thinking, oh gosh, like there's already been like a few sort of scares. I'm worried about my blood pressure. My mum and my sister Becca came and got me, and I said to Harry, you stay with Max, keep it as normal as possible for him at the moment, because obviously at this point we was like, well, nothing's, you know, I'm not in labour, God knows what's going to happen. Went with my mum and my sister Becca. They took me to triage. We was there a little while. They did say my blood pressure was quite high, then they put me on an observation machine, and I was having quite strong Braxton Hicks then as well. And I actually said to my mum at one point, I was like, I wonder if I am actually like in like the early stages of labour, because it keeps happening. Hello. It keeps happening, and yeah, so I really wasn't sure. But anyways, they doctor came round and saw me, and he was just like, you know, are you stressed? Are you, you know, worrying about anything? And I was like, no. I was like, we've just had Christmas, like I feel fine. And he said sometimes in the last stages of pregnancy, like women's blood pressure goes up, and it can be quite normal. It's not necessarily triggered by anything. So they gave me one tablet, I'm sure it was called Labetalol, and then after an hour they checked it again and it had come right down. So they said, I'll just come back the following day and we can just recheck it. So I was like, okay, fine. Harry took me to the hospital the day after, and Max stayed with my mum and dad, and my blood pressure was absolutely fine. So we was like, okay, fine. They did say, because I had the blood pressure tablet, that potentially I'd still be allowed a home birth, but potentially I'd need to transfer into hospital afterwards, just because sometimes you have to have like these like tests done because of the type of medication that you're taking. So I was like, okay, fine. So again, for those of you that don't know, I did have a home birth with my first Maximus. I am actually planning on doing a birth story for him as well. I feel like it's only right to have both of them up. I plan to have a home birth with Rocco as well, so that's why they kind of said like this potentially will happen. Then on the 29th of December, I had loads and loads of contractions, kind of again on and off, not like really strong, but like enough to notice. And I actually like just did a load of tidying and like kept moving my body, went for a few walks, literally just trying everything just to like I suppose just encourage it, like to keep going. But again, they kind of just died down and stopped again. Then on the 30th of December, I was on a mission to, yeah, just get Rocco out. Because I'd had all of these sort of like Braxton Hicks sort of like for nearly a whole week, basically, sort of on and off. It was the whole like stopping starting thing that was the draining thing, because it was kind of like you get excited and you're like, oh, is it happening? Yeah. And then it kind of stops and you're like, oh, okay, no, it's not happening. And then it starts again and you're like, oh, okay. And then no, it stops again. So I think that was quite exhausting. I think it was about 2:30 in the afternoon that, well, I say Braxton Hicks, but at this point I now know they were contractions. But yeah, Braxton Hicks, I thought, oh, okay, they've started again. And they were literally every 10 minutes. But obviously not very strong, but again, enough to notice. That was at 2:30, and at 4 o'clock, I actually texted my sister Rosh, and I was like, I think something's happening. They were still there, so obviously we're like an hour and a half in. They were still there, and they were still ranging from every sort of anywhere from like 9 minutes to 15 minutes apart, and they were still kind of like the same intensity. And honestly, I just kept moving around. I was on my like pregnancy ball. I was like bouncing around on that, up and down, like trying to like, you know, just basically just, I didn't want it to stop at this point. I was like, right, it started. Just come on, like we've got to get this baby out. By between 6 and 7 o'clock, they were a lot more intense, and I was very tired at this point. Obviously, I hadn't like had a lot of great sleep. My entire pregnancy with Rocco, actually, I didn't really have great sleep because obviously Max was still in our bed. And then obviously I've got sciatica and all of these other things. So sleep in general hadn't been great. And then the fact that I was having these Braxton Hicks for near another whole week that were really strong, my sleep that week had been horrendous. So I was really tired by like 6-7 o'clock. And yeah, I think around the same sort of time I was like quite nervy at this point as well. I don't know if it was like the anticipation. I remember saying to Harry like, oh, like I'm worried that it's gonna stop, and I don't want it to stop now. Like I'm so tired. Like I just want to get this over and done with. And honestly, I feel like I just had enough of being pregnant at this point as well. I was just uncomfortable, and I think I just wanted to know that he was okay and get him out safely. And yeah, it had just been a bit of a crazy sort of pregnancy in comparison to like the one with Maximus. And obviously at this point as well, like I had spoken to my mum, and she was just, you know, how are they, like how are you feeling? And I was like, yeah, I definitely feel like I'm in early labour. And obviously my sister Rosh as well. I think by about 9 o'clock they were a lot stronger, and that's kind of when I was like to Harry, I definitely think something is going on here. But again, I had said that a few times that week anyway. It was kind of like, yeah, something's going on here, and then just nothing. So I decided to have a bath, and yeah, they were still sort of 10 minutes, every 10 minutes. More intense, but like no closer together, literally the exact sort of same timing. I had already cried at this point as well. I think I was just like frustrated. The midwives had already said to me as well, like obviously with second babies, they can sort of, the births can happen a lot quicker. Not always, but they can. They said to call the hospital to let them know I'm in labour when I'm having sort of 3 contractions in 10 minutes. So I think that's why I was so frustrated, because I was like, oh, like I can't call the hospital because, you know, I'm still only having 1 every 10 minutes. But yeah, it was supposed to be that I call the hospital when I'm having 3 in 10 minutes, and then they would send the community midwives that are on call out to the house, providing there is a community midwife available. So yeah, I think I was just quite sort of frustrated at this point, so that's why I was like, right, I'm gonna have a bath, try and relax, like try and get the oxytocin flowing. I had a couple contractions after my bath that were longer than 10 minutes, and that's where I started to think, oh gosh, like it's just gonna stop now. I also had extremely bad heartburn, which was, oh gosh, that was horrendous. At about 10 o'clock, they had got stronger, but again, they were still sort of every 10 minutes. I was really tired at this point, and I remember I texted my sister and I just said, like, I'm gonna try and sleep, just try and get some rest, and she was like, yeah, try and get some rest, like, you know, rest before it's sort of full-blown labour. So I was like, okay, yeah, you're right. And me and Harry laid down, and I woke up to an awful pain. And Harry actually had to get me out of the bed. I couldn't get up out of the bed by myself. And I said to him, like, get me out of bed, like, I need to stand. Like, it just felt uncomfortable laying down, and I was literally in so much pain from it. And that's when I looked at Harry and I was like, it's happening, like, this baby is on his way. Harry got my ball for me because it was downstairs, so he brought my ball up, and I was just in our bedroom, like, on the ball. And Harry had already put Max down, like, in his room, because he has been sort of going down to bed in his room, and Harry's been giving him like a bottle and stuff. So we'd been doing that for a few weeks, so it kind of was perfect really, because Harry was able to put him down in his bed, and it meant that I could sort of be in our bedroom for a little while. So I was on the ball, and I text my sister, and I remember saying to her, because obviously I text her and said, like, I'm gonna go and get some rest, I'm gonna go like try and sleep, and she was like, yep, and then I text her, must have been about 11 o'clock I think, and I was like, Rosh, are you awake? And straight away she was like, yeah. She must have been sitting there waiting, bless her. And I was like, I think it's happening. I was like, would you mind just coming and staying the night? I'd feel a lot better knowing that you're here. Because obviously my sister had planned to come and stay with us, and look after Max for us during the labour. But yeah, she must have been waiting, like, literally for the text. And she obviously hadn't had any sleep herself. So I remember texting her, just being like, are you awake? She was like, yeah. She was like, is it happening? I was like, yeah. She was like, right, I'm getting dressed, I'm coming now. And at this point, me and Harry had come downstairs, and I was just having these contractions in the living room, and Harry was like, oh, should we put a film on? And I was like, no, like, I need to just focus on it. And to be fair, I was kind of the same with Max as well. So Rosh left at about 11:10, and then I actually called the hospital, because my sister, like, Rosh said, like, should you just maybe call them and just let them know what's going on and how you're feeling and stuff. And I was like, yeah, do you know what? There's no rule book, like, I can just call anyway. If I'm worried, I can call. So I called, and I just explained, and I just said I've been having what I thought was Braxton Hicks. I said I think I'm in early labour since like 2:30 this afternoon. I said there's still only every 10 minutes. I find it really hard, obviously, I can't really rest or like get any sleep. And I said, like, obviously I'm booked in for a home birth as well, and they said, like, we can't really send anyone out right now because they're not close enough, and, you know. So they just said, wait until you're having 3 in 10 minutes and then give us a call back. Obviously call an ambulance if you get the urge to push. Or any other concerns, obviously just call us back. So I was like, okay, fine. And then my sister got here for just before midnight. Harry had obviously got the bags out of the car, because obviously we didn't know if Rocco was going to be early at one point, if I was going to be induced. We didn't know what was going to happen really, if I was just going to end up in hospital anyway. So we kept them in Harry's car, so he went and grabbed everything out of the car. So I had like the snack bag and things like that. And I actually had a comb. Harry's got this metal comb that I bought him a couple of years ago. It's actually a Game of Thrones comb, but it's metal. He doesn't actually use it. It's more just, I suppose, for show really. But I was actually using that as pain relief, I guess. Lots of people have mentioned like using combs and stuff, and I know there is like a specific brand that you can use, but I didn't invest, and then in the moment I was like, do you know what, I'm going to try this, and it actually really helped. So yeah, when my sister got here, I said to Harry, because he was like falling asleep as well. He was like really tired at this point. Obviously it's just after midnight. And I said to Harry, like Rosh was wide awake, and I said to Harry, do you want to go and get some sleep? Or like, obviously they're still 10 minutes apart, like nothing has ramped up yet. So he went upstairs and got into bed with Max, and my sister Rosh stayed with me while I was in early labour basically, which was actually quite special. Obviously with Max, well, I say obviously, you guys don't know, but with Max it was just me and Harry the entire time. So it was quite nice to have my sister there for a little bit of it as well, and I suppose for her to experience it, because obviously she's given birth before but she's not been at anyone's birth, so that was quite nice for her as well. But honestly we were just talking a load of crap by the sounds of it. I don't even remember what we were talking about. Loads of different stuff, and yeah, I remember the contractions getting quite a lot stronger, and holding the comb in one hand and like putting my arm around my sister. My sister was kind of like holding me, and I was trying to be in, I suppose they call it like is it optimal positioning or something? It's like to get the baby in the right position and to obviously encourage the labour more. But yeah, I was trying to like, I was on my bum, I was kind of like on all fours at one point, standing up as well, like for gravity. Just trying to do like positions that were hopefully going to encourage it along. And yeah, so that was for a while. I then called the hospital. It was a couple of hours, but I then called the hospital again it was about 2:40 in the morning, and I just said, look, I already called once before. She was like, yeah, I got your details. I said, like, the contractions are still every 10 minutes. I said, but they are really, really strong now. Like, I don't really know what to do, or like how to get them to get closer together, and, you know, whatever. And she was like, oh, you know, the early labour stages, they can be quite long sometimes, you know, keep doing what you're doing, like try and rest in between the contractions. And then afterwards she said, like, we will send the community on-call midwife out to you anyway. We'll get them to call you. So I was like, okay, fine. And then the community midwife called me about 10 minutes later. And obviously I know practically all of my community midwives, because they were all sort of involved with my care with Max and my pregnancy with Max. Oh, hello. What happened? So she was like, hi Rihanna. I was like, oh hi. She was like, what's going on? Like, tell me. And I just said, like, I'm having contractions every 10 minutes. I said, but they're getting stronger, a lot stronger, but not closer together. So she was like, do you want us to come to the house, and, you know, or do you want to just take my number and you can call me back as soon as they get a bit stronger or a bit closer together? And I was like, actually, I said, I've been going since like 2:30 this afternoon. I was like, I think I'd just feel reassured if you could just come to the house. So she was like, okay, fine. So at that point, Rosh was like, right, should I go and sort with Harry? I was like, yeah. So she went upstairs and woke Harry up. And Max actually woke up as she woke Harry up at the same time. So yeah, Harry took a little while to come down because he was trying to get Max back to sleep, and then he swapped with Rosh, and Rosh got into bed with Max. And then yeah, obviously at this point as well, we had already sort of half pumped up like the birthing pool. So Harry brought all of that down from the spare room, and just trying to get everything ready, sort of thing, because we wasn't sure again like what sort of stage I was at in the labour. Midwives got there about 35 minutes later, I think it was. A midwife that I had obviously never met before. She was just another on-call midwife. She turned up first. She was absolutely lovely. Just sort of checking in, and, you know, and then she sort of got set up. They asked for like the Wi-Fi password, just so they've got like connection, they can do all their notes, and yeah, just sort of getting settled in really. And then the second community midwife turned up. She's the one that I actually knew, and yeah, so I mean, a lot of people have had questions about sort of how it all works when you're sort of giving birth at home and stuff, but they kind of just do their own thing. Me and Harry put a film on, and like they kind of like just sort of potter around, and yeah, they were like at the dining room table, they were looking through my notes, and then obviously we was talking about like the blood pressure situation that I'd had like a few days previously and having to take the tablet and stuff, just so that it was at the top of their minds, but obviously they go through your notes anyway. And then, yeah, they kind of just do like their observations sort of every, I don't know, 15 to 20 minutes or whatever it was. I can't really remember anything else, to be honest. I can't really remember what other observations they do, but blood pressure was obviously one of them. And like your pulse. And then every time I needed the toilet, I had to do a wee in a little pot so that they could check my urine. At this point, I was like sitting on the ball, having the contractions, and yeah, they were still every 10 minutes apart. They were quite strong at this point still. They hadn't like died down or anything, they were still sort of the same, but yeah, still every 10 minutes. And I hadn't eaten at this point either for quite a while. I don't even remember. I don't think I even managed to eat much of my dinner that evening because I was still having sort of these contractions every 10 minutes, and it was just, I think I felt a bit sick at that point. So yeah, I hadn't eaten, so they encouraged me to eat. So I had a banana and I actually had some sweets. Lots of water. But yeah, they were pretty intense at that point. She did ask me if I wanted to be checked when they got there, so examined to see sort of how many centimetres I was dilated, if any. And I actually declined. I actually said no. I just said, like, can we just see how I go for a little bit, and then if I feel like I want to be checked, then I'll say so later. She was like, yeah, that's absolutely fine. I think I wasn't really sure what was going on at this point either, and I don't think I was convinced is probably the right phrase. I don't think I was convinced that I was going to be that dilated, so I didn't want to get disheartened, especially because I'd been labouring, I guess, from early labour from like 2:30 onwards, and it was now 3:30, nearly 4 o'clock in the morning. So I declined that check. So my blood pressure was a little bit elevated. Obviously, when you're having contractions and stuff, obviously it does raise. So they kind of like just kept checking it and trying to like time it right. So it's like as soon as my contraction would finish, give it a few seconds and then try and do my blood pressure. But then I was having more contractions. It was a bit all over the place. I think my blood pressure was a little bit elevated. Then they did it again and it had come back down. And then on the, I think the third or the fourth time that they had done it, it had gone back up and it was quite high again. She kind of like looked at the other midwife and then she was like, right, I'll do it again. And then they did it again, and I think they were obviously really wanted me to have the home birth, and to get the birth that I wanted. But the blood pressure was still quite high. Because the blood pressure was so high, they said, like, we're really sorry, but you're gonna have to go to hospital. They were really, really apologetic. They were like, I'm so sorry, like, I've really tried to, you know, like, space it out and try and do it again. We've tried a couple of times, but it's just not budging, like, it's still quite high. So I was like, okay, not what I wanted. And again, like I said, because I had a home birth with Max, not what I know or knew, I guess. With Max, it was like, you know, I've had him at home, so I had nothing to compare it to. Then having to go into hospital, I think I was a little bit nervous at that point because I was like, I just didn't know what to expect. Obviously, it's my second child, but I have no idea what to expect in a hospital setting. But yeah, they were really apologetic. Although I was nervous at this point, I always said to Harry, like, I'll do, no matter what, I'll do whatever I need to do to make sure that baby boy is safe. Obviously. So that was about 5:40ish. So from about 3:30, I think they got there, until 5:40. But yeah, my blood pressure was just too high, and she was like, you're gonna have to go to the hospital, get it all checked out. And she was like, we don't have the medication that you might need if your blood pressure keeps getting higher or stays high, whereas they will at the hospital. So I was like, okay, that's fine. So I was a little bit gutted when she first said it, but at the same time, like, I was like, I need to make sure that he's okay and that I'm okay as well, like, health wise. But yeah, literally as she was like, right, I'm gonna call the hospital and let them know that you're gonna be, you know, on your way. And then I started throwing up. God, it was horrendous. I threw up literally all of the banana, sweets. It was just disgusting. And yeah, I kept apologising to midwives. I was like, I'm really sorry, while I'm throwing up, and they were like, stop apologising. But yeah, the community midwife that I actually had, she was like, oh, if you had waited until the morning, like if baby boy had waited until the morning, she was like, basically the midwife that delivered Max, she was going to be on shift, and she was like, oh, she would have ended up delivering the second baby potentially. I was like, oh gosh. So yeah, I mean, it happened the way it happened. So yeah, she called the hospital, let them know that we were going to be coming in. She said she didn't need to call an ambulance because I wasn't in well, they didn't think that I was in active labour at this point, just because my contractions were still 10 minutes apart. And obviously Harry was able to take me to the hospital. So yeah, Harry literally got everything ready. He was like, right, I've got to get all the bags back in the car. Obviously the car seats were already in the car. But yeah, he got like all of the bags back in the car. He went upstairs and got me clothes because obviously I was just like in my nightie. Yeah, just literally grabbed everything, bless him, it was amazing. Got everything in the car, and then the midwife was like, make sure you take it was like a little bowl that I had. She was like, take the bowl with you. And I was like, oh gosh. Got in the car. It took us about 30 minutes to get to the hospital. So it's not like a really, really long journey. But my gosh, it felt like the longest journey I've ever been on in my entire life. It was horrendous. We got in the car at about 6:10 in the morning, and I was having contractions. Obviously Harry's going down the motorway, I'm having contractions. So I've got the comb in one hand, I've got a bottle of water, I've got the bowl on my lap. Then I start throwing up. It was, when I say horrendous, oh gosh, it was so bad. Started throwing up while Harry's on the motorway and I'm having a contraction at the same time. And obviously you just can't stop yourself. When you're throwing up like that, you can't obviously stop being sick, and you can't stop the contractions. It was just like everything was forcefully happening at that point. So yeah, Harry had to pull over so that I could actually empty the sick bucket. Just on the side of the road basically. So yeah, it was, oh gosh, it was awful. But yeah, it took us about 30 minutes to get there. When I got to the hospital, I went to triage, and they kind of was like, hi, like what's going on? And I was like, oh, I said, my midwife already called ahead and said that we were coming. She was like, was it Rihanna? I was like, yeah. So she was like, right, okay. So I gave her the notes, like my hospital notes, and she was like, right, can you go and do a urine sample? Now the toilet was like down all the way down the other end of the corridor, and I was just like, oh my gosh. So I'm like literally having contractions, having to stop down the corridor. I mean, I didn't care at this point. I always thought, oh, I'd probably care if people were looking at me and I'm having contractions, but I honestly did not care at this point. Did a urine sample. Harry got me all the way back to triage. Got me in a little bed, like a little cubicle basically, with like a curtain. And midwife came and checked on me, and she, obviously I explained and said like I was due to have a home birth, but obviously my blood pressure was really high, so they said that I needed to come to the hospital. She's like, right, okay, we'll check the urine sample. And then she said that she would do my blood pressure. So she did my blood pressure, and she kind of looked at the screen a bit sort of confused, and then she was like, your blood pressure's fine. And I was like, what? I've just done that horrendous drive for no reason. But yeah, she said the blood pressure was absolutely fine. So then she was like, right, let me try again. Did it again, it was fine. And then she actually went and got a different machine because she thought the machine was broken, because my blood pressure was so normal, like it was literally perfect. But again, she was like, yeah, it's fine. So while I was there, I said to her, are you able to check me and do an examination? Because at this point, the contractions were really, really strong. And like, even when Harry had like pulled up to the car park, like I don't even know how many times I had to stop, like walking from the car park to the actual hospital bit, like the maternity bit that I had to go to. So I was like, please can someone check me? Like, I just want to know what's going on now. So I've been in labour since 2:30 this afternoon. I said, it's now nearly 7 o'clock or whatever it was. I said, my contractions are 10 minutes apart. I said, but they're so intense now. Like, it's almost becoming, like, the pain threshold is just, if we're getting there. And she was like, we don't really like to check you unless you're having more contractions in 10 minutes. Because obviously risk of infection. And I was like, I understand that. I was like, but like, I can't keep going on like this for God knows how many more hours. I was like, I haven't slept, I haven't been able to eat, I keep throwing up. So she was like, let me check with the doctor and see what they say. So I was like, okay, fine. She wasn't convinced that I was in active labour at all. She assumed that because I was only having one contraction every 10 minutes that I wasn't in active labour. And it made me doubt myself as well. But I said to Harry, something is going on, like the contractions can't be this strong for no reason, like something's happening. So anyway, she came back and she said, the doctor said it's fine, I can give you an examination, and if you want, I can give you a sweep while I'm there, basically, to see if that encourages your contractions to get closer together. So I was like, yes, please, just do it. Anyway, she did the examination, and again, she looked really, really confused. she kind of like looked down at her fingers and was like sort of measuring. That's how they like measure like how dilated you are. And then she like basically re-examined me, and then she was like, you're definitely in active labour. And I was like, oh, I was like, great, like pleasantly surprised. I did think something was going on, and she was like, there's no way that you're in early labour. She was like, you're in active labour. And she was like, I can't even say that you're 3 centimetres. She was like, you're definitely 4 centimetres dilated. And I was like, yes. I am in active labour. I knew it. But yeah, I was really, really happy at this point. They were going to send me home originally because obviously my blood pressure was completely fine, so that I can continue with the home birth if I wanted to, obviously. But then obviously I asked to be examined and checked, and obviously they found out that I was actually in active labour. So she was like, it would be a little bit sort of unwise for them to sort of send me home. She was like, because you've already had blood pressure issues, like you might end up going home, your blood pressure rise again, and they send you back to the hospital. And I just remember saying to Harry, like, I do not want to do that car journey again. I do not want to be throwing up, having contractions, going over humps, and no thank you. She said it was still up to me, and she asked me, she said like, what would you prefer to do? Would you prefer to be at home and go home and have the home birth, or do you want to stay? And I actually said like, I actually think I'd prefer to stay at hospital at this point. And I sort of looked at Harry, and I think he knew that I wanted to stay at hospital. And I mean, like, I suppose looking back on it now, like when me and Harry were spoken about it and stuff, I think we were both a little bit worried about Max, because Max normally wakes up around sort of 6 o'clock. So I think we were both like looking at the time thinking, oh gosh, he's going to wake up in a minute and he's going to hear us and he's going to be upset and he's not going to know what's going on. And I think in my head, maybe, like, I was quite worried about my blood pressure, and I was worried about Rocco and my pregnancy anyway. And I think maybe I had it in my head a little bit that I was worried, sort of subconsciously anxious. And I wasn't 100% comfortable at home during this birth, during this labour. So, I don't know if that's why my blood pressure was so high at home. And then as soon as I got to hospital, it was like that reassurance that actually everything's okay. So I made the decision to stay at the hospital, although it wasn't obviously the birth plan I had in mind, and it wasn't sort of what I wanted originally anyway. That was at about 7:15 in the morning. She did say that they were at max capacity, so she said I'll need to go and check with the labour ward and find out what's what. I was then sick again, in the bucket that the bowl thing that I'd actually taken, and a midwife came and cleaned it all for us, and then she gave me proper sick, the disposable ones that they have in the hospital. But she was like, that was literally pure bile, and it was because I obviously hadn't had anything in my stomach at this point. Like, there was literally nothing. She's like, you really need to try and eat something, but I just couldn't. Every time I was eating, I was throwing up. So yeah, I was really, really sick at that point. About 8:15, I think it was. I think we was in that bit for about an hour. The midwife had come around before, and she said like, someone's going to come down from the labour ward shortly. So I was like, okay, fine. Oh, and I forgot to say as well that when the midwife did the examination, and obviously she said that I was 4 centimetres dilated, she said, I can still give you a sweep if you want, and I said yes. And so she did give me the sweep. The sweep was really, really uncomfortable, obviously having contractions at the same time, but yeah, really quite painful actually. But I've also heard people say like, the more painful it is, like the better it's supposed to be, because it speeds things up and gets things moving along. Whether that's true or not, I have no idea. But as soon as I had the sweep, my contractions ramped up, and they were really, really intense at this point, to the point where I said to Harry, like, I really need some gas and air at this point. But yeah, we was in that bit for about an hour, and obviously my contractions were just, yeah, really intense at this point. Lovely midwife came round from the labour ward to come and get us. And she was like, can you walk? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, okay, great. If you need me to stop, like, I'll stop. So walking around, and honestly it felt like a really long walk as well, and I had to stop a few times from the contractions. But I didn't really want to like sit down. I wanted things to keep moving. Now that I knew I was in active labour, I was like, I need to get this baby out. And also I was so tired at this point as well. But as we were walking round, I said to her, do you have a birthing pool like available? And she's like, oh, you want to use the water? And I was like, yeah, if I can. So she was like, yeah, we've got one available. But yeah, when we went in there, they hadn't set that one up. But the bed was like wet, where it had just been cleaned down and stuff. So literally they must have literally just had someone leave. So it was like perfect timing for us, really. But yeah, so lucky that we actually got the room that we got, I was actually quite surprised and quite shocked. It was absolutely massive. There was like a bed, a chair, there was like different like yoga balls, like pregnancy balls. They had a massive birth pool, private bathroom obviously, and yeah, I was really, really impressed with like just how big the actual room was. And then they had like a little projector with like starlights, so they put the starlights on, and they had a speaker, so Harry hooked up his phone and we had a load of country music on, so that was really nice. Really, really surprised, pleasantly surprised by like what the room actually looks like. They set up the room while I was just sort of sitting on the chair, like new bedding and whatnot. Brought me some water, and Harry went round to move the car closer because they said there was a different car park that he could park closer to. So he'd moved the car and he got all of the bags. I asked my gas and air, and I got my gas and air at this point, which was a relief at this point. Yeah, and then I actually asked for something to eat. Obviously, I said to my midwife, like, I've been throwing up non-stop. I'm starving, but I can't seem to keep anything down either. I was like, is there any way I can get some toast or something? So she was like, yep, I'll get you toast. So another lady brought me toast. I don't think I managed to eat much of it, a couple of bites maybe. I actually asked for basically like an anti-sick injection, anti-sickness injection, or whatever it's called. I just said, like, I cannot keep being sick like this, like throughout the whole like labour, like I need to, yeah, be okay. So she was like, we can give it to you. She said, but it is quite normal for obviously women to be sick in labour. And I was sick. I was sick probably about 4 or 5 times with Max in labour as well. But I was like, please, I was like, I've not been able to eat, and I think I was just desperate at this point. So she was like, yeah, I'll give it to you anyway. They did the injection in my bum cheek, which was not pleasant, but it wasn't the worst compared to the contractions I was having at that point. So I had the anti-sick injection. To be fair, I wasn't actually sick anymore after that, but I kept heaving, sort of gagging and heaving like I was going to be sick. I felt very sick, but I wasn't actually sick anymore from what I can remember. So yeah, that was about, I don't know, 8:30, 8:20-ish in the morning. Still very, very intense obviously, but still 10 minutes apart, and I was just like, what on earth is going on? I just kind of laboured like on the bed, on the ball. If I needed to go to the toilet, I'd go to the toilet, and every time I went to the toilet they asked me to wee in a pot so that they could check it and everything. I think about 10:20-ish is when I actually ended up getting into the pool. I remember saying, like, please, like the contractions were so bad, and I was like, please, like, I want to get in the water, like, I'm desperate to get in the water, because I remember getting in the water with Max and having contractions with Max and just immediate relief, and I was like, just so desperate at this point. Like, I really wanted to get in the water, and I think I'd been going on about it for probably about an hour at this point. She didn't want me to get in the water too soon because my contractions were still sort of 10 minutes apart, and she didn't want them to slow down even more, because obviously at this point we don't want that, we want the opposite obviously. So she was quite hesitant to let me get in the water, but about 10:20-ish I managed to get in the water, and I was so happy. Literally so happy. I was like, oh, like literally sigh of relief. You just become like weightless, and the water's nice and warm, and it soothes everything, and yeah, it was just amazing. And pair that with the gas and air, I was like, okay, this is a lot more manageable now. The only thing she said was, obviously, if my contractions slow down, then I would need to be getting out of the pool and moving around and whatnot, because obviously we need to keep them going on and getting them closer together. So I was like, okay, fine. And I did agree to that. But luckily they didn't slow down. They got close together, to be fair. So yeah, my contractions were really, really strong. And like I said to her, like, when can you next check me? So I think I'd been checked at about just before 7 o'clock. So she was like, the next time we can check you is about 11 o'clock. So I was like, okay, fine. So I was in the pool from probably about 10:20-ish, I think. I'm not entirely sure. It might have been earlier, but I really don't think it was. And then I got out at 11 because obviously she said that she would need to check me. I was having loads and loads and loads of pressure in my bum at this point. But when I got out of the pool, she said that she wasn't going to check me, and I was like filled with rage, thinking, why is she not checking me? And when I asked her, she said, oh, we actually think that you are, that baby is back to back with you. And to be fair, I had the exact same with Max. Where he was back to back with me for ages. So she was like, we want to try a couple of like positions and see if we can get baby to turn, because that will make it a lot easier for you to actually push him out, basically. And so obviously, again, I agreed. I'm always quite open-minded when it comes to these things. Like, these are the professionals at the end of the day. They know exactly what they're talking about and doing, and I put my trust in them. So yeah, obviously I was very open to that. I was like, yep, okay, let's do it. And she said, we think this is why your contractions are so intense and why they're not getting as close as we want them to. I was quite open to it. We decided to do it. So I had to lay on the bed on my side, with my leg, one of my legs hanging off, kind of like, yeah, this leg hanging over the other leg off the other side of the bed. But I wasn't allowed to put my foot on the floor. My foot had to be, yeah, in the air, basically. So I remember the midwife was round like this side of me while I was on this side. Harry was holding my foot, was having the gas and air, and I had to have 3 contractions in this position. So it's like you really pull like your leg over your other leg to try and encourage baby to turn. And I could feel him moving, to be fair, and I said that, I was like, I can feel him moving. She was like, good, that's what we want. So I'm pretty sure I had 3 contractions in that position, and then I had to roll on to this side and do the exact same thing, 3 contractions. And yeah, so that's what we did. And I did say, like, I have felt him move. I don't know what's going on, but he is moving. She was like, okay, great. Honestly, that positioning was excruciatingly painful. Really, really painful. Obviously, you're in the most uncomfortable position. It's not like you're comfy anyway, because you've got to try and keep your leg up, and Harry was holding my leg, and I've got the gas and air, and yeah, it was really, really painful being in that position. I actually held my midwife's hand, and I actually apologised to her after, because I felt like I was squeezing her so much. Then straight after that, she was like, right, if you lay on your back, Rihanna, we'll check you. So I was like, okay, great. Let's see where we are, basically. So she checked me, but she didn't say how dilated I was at this point, and quite honestly, I was quite out of it. I think there was actually a point where I'd had so much gas and air, I actually thought I was going to pass out at one point after this, like the positioning that we had done. I took like 3 big breaths, and then I felt my head go funny. I remember Harry holding me, and she was like, oh, came around really quickly, obviously, but it was just like, I was so tired. I was absolutely exhausted. I'd had no sleep for God knows how long at this point, no food pretty much. And I just wanted it over and done with at this point. I'd been asking for a few hours as well if they would break my waters. And I say the reason for this is because with Max, I was in early labour for a while, and it wasn't until they broke my waters, once I'd got to 4 centimetres, they broke my waters, and labour happened pretty much straight away. I kind of had it in my head that it was going to be the exact same with Rocco, and I kept saying, like, I don't think that I'm going to be more dilated unless you break my waters. I still kept an open mind about it, don't get me wrong, but in my head I was like, oh, I feel like they need to break my waters, like they've got to break my waters. Like, it was constant in my head. And I'd been asking, I said, if I'm not more than 4 centimetres, when you check me at 11 o'clock, please will you break my waters? And she was like, if you're not more than 4, she said, I'll be very surprised, but she was like, we'll discuss breaking your waters and obviously the risks and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, fine. But she was like, if you're more than 4 centimetres, so even if I'm a centimetre more, we're not going to break your waters. So I was like, okay. She was like, it's because we know that your body is doing what it should be doing and you're heading in the right direction. So I was like, okay, fine. And obviously she didn't break my waters, but she also didn't tell me how dilated I was, and I didn't ask at this point. Harry didn't ask at this point. So yeah, we was kind of like just there. She sort of still had her fingers inside of me while she was doing the examination, and she actually asked me to do a practice push. Honestly, like, I was a little bit shocked at this point, because I thought, oh, am I 10 centimetres dilated then? Why is she getting me to push here? I don't want to give birth on the bed. But anyways, I think, again, I was so out of it. I did 2 practice pushes, and she said it was just so that she could see if baby was moving down or not. Again, I don't really remember her saying much after this, and Harry doesn't either. She said I could get back in the water, so I was like, okay, great. Couldn't wait to get back in the water. As I stood up, I remember saying, I need to push, like, got loads of pressure, and I felt my body sort of do a small involuntary push, and that's how I kind of knew, like, things were, like, nearly there. I got back in the water, and she basically said, like, we're going to give you another hour to see if your waters break naturally. So I was like, okay, fine. Frustrating, but I was like, okay, fine. She said, try not to push unless you absolutely need to, like you can't stop it. And it is honestly one of the worst feelings, like trying to stop yourself when your body is just doing it. It feels unnatural. But she was like, try not to push, we'll give you an hour, see what happens. I was like, okay. And I was a little bit disappointed at that point, because I thought, oh, like, she's not broke my waters haven't broke naturally. I don't actually know how dilated I am at this point, and I didn't even think to ask at this point, because again, I was just really out of it. So I felt a little bit disappointed, but I remember getting in the water. As soon as I got in the water, I said to Harry, I feel like I need to push. And he was like, Rihanna, if you need to push, then push. He was like, just push. If you need to push and your body is telling you that, you just do it. And I started pushing, and my waters broke in the water. Again, I hadn't experienced that before because I had my waters broke with Max, but yeah, them breaking naturally, it was like the weirdest feeling, like a pop. Oh, you look massive and you lost a sock. Still got the little newborn sponge. Alright, alright. Come in. Someone's woken up really hungry. Just let him have a feed while I finish this. So yeah, weirdest feeling, having my waters break naturally. But yeah, that happened, and my midwife was kind of like, okay, like it's fine. And I think I probably sounded more panicked as well, because obviously it was just an unusual feeling to me. I had not been through that before. It was completely different. I then pushed again, and Rocco's head came out basically. I remember I felt his head sort of crowning, and yeah, one more push and his head was out. I remember I put my hand down and I had his head in my hand, and I was like, his head's out, like what the heck, his head's out. Like I wasn't expecting it to happen so quickly. I remember with Max, I'd been pushing for quite a while. Yeah, my midwife was like by like the bed at this point, and obviously I had no gas and air at this point, because obviously you're like trying to breathe through and like push with everything you've got. But she was like over by the bed, and I was obviously in the pool. Harry was in front of me outside of the pool, like holding my hands and everything. And yeah, I think I was like Harry, you need to like catch him, because obviously Harry caught Max. He was actually in the pool at home with me, with Max. Again, this is all sort of really new to us and like really different. So I was like, Harry, you're gonna have to catch him. Like I think I was panicked at this point. And Harry went to put his hands in the water, and the midwife was like, you can't put your hands in the pool. And Harry was like, well, who's gonna catch, like, are you gonna do it? Who's gonna catch the baby? And she was like, no. She was like, I can't put my hands in the water. She's like, Rihanna's gonna have to do it herself. And I'm thinking, what? You're only just telling me this now? Like, I've got to do this. Like, I've not prepared myself mentally for this. Like, what on earth? And honestly, I didn't actually know if she was joking or not. And then afterwards, me and Harry were talking, we was like, maybe she just wanted me to feel empowered to do it, and she wanted me to do it. But yeah, honestly, I don't know. Like, when I spoke to my community midwife about it after, she was like, I've never heard that before. Like, she had her hands in the water with Max, and yeah, I don't know, very, very bizarre moment. I remember looking at Harry and just being like shocked, and like I think he could see the panic, and I think he was a bit like, what on earth is going on? I think Harry said that I must have done a total of like 3 or 4 pushes, and Rocco came out. He was born at 11:50. He came out, I didn't catch him. When he came out, he went kind of like towards the bottom of the pool, and it was really hard because obviously I was on my knees in the pool, and obviously he came out sort of underneath me, and I had to like move back, but I was scared that I was gonna like squash him or sit on him or sort of catch him with my leg or something, so I'm like trying to move back and like trying to get him out of the water as fast as I can as well. Picked him up, and obviously he was crying. I had like 2 midwives running, 2 or 3 midwives came running in, because I remember saying to my midwife, like, he's out, he's coming out, he's out. And yeah, there was a midwife that came round. I don't even remember what she looked like, but she came round like the side of the pool, this side. Harry was in front of me, and I was holding Rocco, looking at him like in disbelief that I'd obviously done it. And she was like, oh, do you know what you're having? And I was like, oh, it's a boy. She was like, shall we just check? I was like, okay. So we checked, and obviously he is a boy. Kind of gave him like a little rub, and he was crying. So yeah, that is my birth story. I then had to obviously get out of the pool, I felt like his cord was quite sort of short, so it was quite hard to hold him, and it was quite awkward getting out of the pool when you're holding a baby. And yeah, so yeah, that was that. Got out of the pool, got onto the bed, and we obviously asked for delayed cord clamping. So again, if you don't know this, but Harry did a bit more research on it after we had Max, but with delayed cord clamping, they could kind of delay it. It's kind of like the norm now, but they could delay it for like 5 minutes and call that delayed cord clamping. But if you say you want to delay it until the cord stops pulsating, they have to do that as well, providing that obviously it's safe to do so and there's no sort of medical emergencies or anything that they have to intervene, then it's absolutely fine. You can ask for that. So Harry advocated for me in those moments, and he said, like, we want delayed cord clamping, and she was like, okay, great. And I laid down on the bed and Rocco was on my tummy, and we did that, and I'm sure it was about 20 minutes that she actually delayed it by. Now with Max, I'm pretty sure it was only about 5 minutes, and then Harry cut the cord. But with Rocco, it was about 20 minutes, and there was actually a few times where I was like, are we done yet? Like, we feel like we've been sitting here for ages. As soon as I laid down as well, I had the most, it just basically felt like I was still having contractions. Obviously they gave me an injection in my arm to help the placenta come out, because I literally did not have the energy at this point to do any more. So I was like, yep, give me the injection. They did it in my arm, and then yeah, the cramping started pretty much straight away. Felt like I was still having contractions, and just like, yeah, really severe cramping after that. So obviously I actually felt like quite worse for wear at this point, because I've not eaten, I've not slept, my body's absolutely exhausted, I've just pushed the baby out. I'm now cramping, and I actually said a few times, like, are we done yet? Like, can you cut the cord so we can get this bloody placenta out of me? And I just, like, you know, you want to get into like the recovery stage and like have a little bit of a nap and have a bit of skin to skin and eat some food and stuff like that. And yeah, so it was about 20 minutes of delayed cord clamping, which was great. When we actually compare photos of Max and Rocco, those first few hours, his skin is so pink, where he's literally taken as much as he could from the placenta, all the blood and the oxygen and the nutrients and everything, which is amazing. Max actually looks really pale in his sort of first few hour photos. Then Harry cut the cord after it stopped pulsating, which I got a few photos of that, which is really nice. And then it was to try and get the placenta out. So I gave birth at 11:50. I had the injection a few minutes after that, and they weren't able to get the placenta out until 12:30. Now with Max, I remember them like kind of like tugging at it and things like that, and I was actually worried that it was stuck at one point, but it was fine. And then with this one, I actually got it into my head that something was wrong, and that's why it wasn't coming out. And yeah, I was really quite scared, to be honest. But tried a load of different positions. They tried to get me to push a little bit to try and help it along. In the end, I actually ended up getting on a birthing stool, and she was like kind of like underneath me, like trying to yank it out. Basically, it was really uncomfortable, really not pleasant. And I actually asked for the gas and air, and they did give it to me. Once the placenta was out, it was then time to get stitched up, because they examined me, and I did actually have a 2nd degree tear. I did actually have the same with Max as well, so I kind of anticipated it, that potentially it would happen again, and I kind of knew what to expect as well. The only bad thing about this time around was that it took her so long to actually stitch me up and to get everything prepared and organised. I'm sure Harry said it was like over an hour of getting everything prepped and stitching me up. It felt like it took forever, and I also needed a wee really bad, so I was busting for the toilet. My tummy was cramping. I was just in so much pain. Obviously my vagina is hurting, I've just pushed the baby out and I've got a tear. So yeah, being stitched up was a lot worse than the first time, unfortunately, but the tear wasn't that much worse either. It was pretty much the same. Once she had finished stitching me up, she actually gave me some painkillers, and then I was able to do my first feed with Rocco, and that wasn't until about 1:40 in the afternoon. So he was born at 11:50, and I didn't actually get to feed him until about 1:40, and that was because I literally could not do it while I was being stitched up and in pain. I literally had the gas and air while I was being stitched up and everything, and even when she had like injected sort of like the numbing stuff to like, so you couldn't feel, like when she's doing the stitches, there was still a few times where I was like, I can feel that, and she had to re-inject more of the stuff, and I was like, oh gosh, that's why it just took so long. But yeah, we finally got our first feed, didn't we? We did that, and then I had some food. Now when people say like hospital food, tea and toast or whatever is like top tier, like after you've given birth, I never understood it, because obviously I've never had a hospital birth before. I actually had an Indian after my labour with Max, after I'd given birth. With Rocco, they brought me around a cheese sandwich and some, I don't know, some biscuits and a tea. It was the best tea I'd ever had in my life. I felt revived straight away. I was like, I needed this food so much. Then Rocco got weighed at about 2:30. Then we did the second feed at about 3 o'clock. And then I had a nap because I was absolutely exhausted, and Harry just had cuddles with him. Then, yeah, I remember just like sweating really bad, like insane amount of sweat. Just feeling really hot. But we actually got to stay, it was really nice, we actually got to stay in the birthing room. So normally they said that they move you around to like a labour ward or like a birth ward or whatever, I don't know what they call it. But they move you around to like a different ward with other mums after you've given birth. But I'd actually fallen asleep, and then the midwife had come in and said to Harry like, oh, we can move you around now if you want to. And Harry was like, oh, are we allowed to stay here? And she was like, yeah, there's no one else needs it at the moment, so you're welcome to stay here. So Harry was like, great, we'll stay here then. So I had a private bathroom, and it was amazing. It was really nice. We were really lucky. And they brought me around some dinner, and then they did some checks on Rocco, and then we left at about 7:20 in the evening, which was amazing that we got to go home. Originally they said that Rocco might need some testing just because I had the blood pressure tablet. I had one tablet, but when I actually spoke to the midwife, she said it's out of my system at this point, so she was like, you don't actually need to. So I was like, oh, okay, fine. And she was like, oh, are you eager to get home? And I was like, really eager to get home. I was like, I've got a toddler at home, like, I want to go and see Max. I was really missing him at this point. And I just wanted to be in my own bed, like in my own bed, have a shower in my own, house. And yeah, and we ended up getting home, and obviously Max met Rocco for the first time. He honestly wasn't too interested. He was quite tired, and it was quite late by this point. And obviously my sister Rosh, she got to meet him as well, and we're so grateful to her for looking after Max for us during that time as well. So yeah, that is Rocco's birth story. It's so surreal. I will say that the cramping the second time around was absolutely horrendous, and it was for quite a few weeks, to be fair. A lot worse than with Max. And when I spoke to every midwife that I spoke to be fair, has said that it's because your uterus is working harder to contract back down because it's stretched for the second time, and apparently it gets worse the more babies you have. So RIP to me if I decide to have any more, which is probably a yes. Not the birth story that I imagined I'd be telling, not how I imagined things to go at all. I'm just grateful that Rocco got here safe and that he was healthy and there was no complications. I'm really grateful that I was able to give birth the way I gave birth, like in the water and stuff. There was a point where I questioned, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to handle it at one point where I was just so exhausted. But I didn't speak it out loud, and I just kept believing in myself and like really trying to push through it, and I'm really glad that I did. So yeah, just not the way I thought it was going to go, but just grateful that I'm healthy and that Rocco's healthy. I also feel like my opinion obviously on a hospital birth has completely changed as well. I only had a home birth to compare it to, and that made me quite anxious, not knowing sort of what to expect in a hospital setting. But I can't fault anything, to be honest, apart from maybe the amount of time it took to stitch me up. But other than that, everything was amazing. We got to play our music, we got to have the star projector in there, I got to go in the water, we had a whole room, the room's absolutely massive. So it's just, can't really fault anything about it. And because Max was at home and he was safe and he's got his own toys and things like that, that was quite reassuring to me. So I don't know if I'll ever have a home birth again. Who knows? I can't fault the hospital setting, the hospital birth at all, to be honest. But yeah, that's my birth story. It's really long because obviously there's so much to talk about and to go through. But yeah, Rocco is here and he's healthy and he's safe, and that's the main thing. So we were originally told that Rocco was £6.8, but he was actually £6.13. I won't go into all of that now, but yeah, that was his weight. So he was still smaller than Max, but not like extremely small where they were obviously a little bit worried about it, like in the scans and stuff. Not really, really bad. So, but yeah, that's my birth story. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we will see you for the next one.